Ever feel like life's got that rule book, but you never got a copy?
Right.
Like nobody gave it to you. That's where Florence Scovel Shinn comes in. You guys sent over some excerpts from her book. It's from 1925, The Game of Life and How to Play It. And man, this woman, she was really onto something.
She was ahead of her time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's amazing how relevant those ideas that she was talking about, those principles of spiritual law and manifestation, how relevant they are today, you know, almost 100 years later.
Yeah.
It's like she tapped into something, like she cracked the code, something that's always working in our favor.
Okay, so first things first, Shinn lays out this really bold concept. She says, life's not a battle, it's a game.
Right.
And like any game, there are rules. So forget struggling. It's time to like play strategically.
Precisely, yeah. And one of the most fundamental rules in this game of life, as she calls it, is this principle of giving and receiving. What you put out into the world, you're going to get back. It's like that universal boomerang.
So if you're throwing out negativity, guess what's coming back around?
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just our actions, it's even our words, right? Our words carry weight. And she tells this kind of amusing and slightly alarming anecdote about this woman who had this habit of joking about ending up in the poorhouse.
Oh, I think I read this one. Didn't she end up almost penniless?
She did.
Oh, no.
She did. Because that subconscious mind, it doesn't quite grasp humor in the same way that, our conscious mind does. So her jokes became self-fulfilling prophecies.
Whoa. Okay, so that's a pertinent reminder to maybe be a little more mindful of the words that we're using.
Yeah.
Especially those offhand jokes about being broke or whatever it is we don't want.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And, this actually ties into one of Shinn's, I think, most fascinating explorations, and that's her exploration of the three departments of the mind: the subconscious, the conscious, and the superconscious.
All right, let's unpack that, because we've got these three parts of our mind, and they're all interacting. So how does that actually work to shape our reality?
Think of your subconscious mind like this fertile ground, right?
Huh.
Incredibly receptive, constantly absorbing information, experiences. But here's the thing. It doesn't judge what it receives. So whether it's a conscious thought that you're holding, a deep-seated belief that you've carried with you since childhood, or even, as Shinn suggests, those vivid games of pretend that we engaged in as kids, the subconscious takes it all in.
And uses that material to create our reality.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's really something.
That's where Shinn's story about the widow visualization comes in, right?
Yeah.
The woman who played widow as a child, and then tragically, later in life, her husband dies young.
Exactly. It's a powerful, powerful illustration of the subconscious mind's ability to really manifest, like literally bring into form our thoughts and beliefs.
Wow.
Even the unintended ones, right? Even those things that we're not consciously aware of. It's a stark reminder, don't you think?
Right.
To really examine those images, those beliefs that we might be unconsciously holding within.
It makes you wonder about the potential consequences of those deep-seated beliefs that we might not even be aware of.
Right.
Like, what are some visualizations we might be unknowingly projecting out into our own lives?
Yeah, that's something to really think about.
That's something to ponder, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got this powerful subconscious, but then there's also this concept of the superconscious.
Right.
What's that all about?
So the superconscious, think of that as like this realm of infinite potential.
Okay.
Like tapping into this universal source. And Shinn believed that this is the realm of perfect ideas and the divine design for each of our lives.
Okay.
And that divine design is like a blueprint for our highest good.
So it's like our best possible selves already exist.
They do.
We just need to figure out how to align with that vision.
Yes.
But how do we actually do that? How do we tap into that divine design and bring it into our reality?
Well, Shinn emphasizes the importance of aligning our desires with this pre-existing divine design. Chasing after things that aren't truly meant for us, that's where we're likely to encounter frustration, roadblocks. It's like we're trying to fit, a square peg into a round hole. You might be able to force it eventually, but it's not going to be pretty.
Right, and it's not going to work very well.
Not at all, no.
Yeah. Shinn shares that story about the woman who was fixated on marrying this specific man, right?
Yes, she was convinced that this was the only man for her.
Uh-huh.
And she wanted Shinn to basically speak it into existence.
Yeah.
But Shinn, she felt that this was out of alignment with spiritual law. And instead of trying to force it, She encouraged the woman to open herself up to what she called divine selection, to be open to the partner who was truly meant for her highest good.
And that's where things take like a fascinating turn in the story,
They
right?
do. They really do. Because gradually, this woman starts to realize that her feelings for this first man, they're fading. And then seemingly out of nowhere, she meets someone new, someone who is, aligned, perfectly aligned with her. And while she describes it as uncanny, Shinn presents it as the law of substitution at play.
Wow. So by letting go of a desire that wasn't serving her highest good, she actually created space for something even better to enter her life. That's incredible. That's incredibly empowering.
Doesn't it? So I think
Especially when we find ourselves like clinging to desires that just aren't manifesting. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, what if I let go?
Right.
What could show up?
What could show up? It really speaks to the power of surrender and trusting that the universe has this plan for us, and that plan is far more magnificent than anything we can come up with on our own.
Okay. I'm definitely feeling more open to that whole divine timing thing
Right.
right now. Like, yes, I'm on board,
Yeah.
but it's not just about sitting back and passively waiting for things to happen, right?
No.
Shin also talks about this idea of asking a right.
Yes.
What does that even mean?
Asking a right is really about aligning our desires with the good of the whole. It's not about begging, pleading with the universe, It's about stating our desires clearly with this unwavering conviction that they're already on their way.
So it's about embodying the feeling of having already received what we're asking for.
Yes. Cultivating that deep inner knowing that what we desire is not only possible, but it's already in motion.
Okay.
It's already happening. And Shinn illustrates this beautifully with the story of the three kings in the desert, remember, desperately searching for water.
Oh, right. And the prophet Elisha gives them those like seemingly bizarre instructions. Right? It's like, thus saith the Lord, you shall not see the wind, neither shall you see rain, yet make this valley full of ditches.
Yes.
Talk about counterintuitive.
Exactly. And what are they being instructed to do? They're being instructed to prepare.
Yeah.
Prepare for what they desire most, even though there's no visible sign of it.
So how does this digging ditches principle apply to like our everyday lives?
So digging ditches is about aligning our actions with those desired outcomes, even if it seems illogical or premature.
Right. Okay.
Because what we're doing is we're demonstrating this unwavering faith,
Okay.
right,
Yeah.
to the universe through our actions. We're showing that we're ready.
We're ready to receive.
We are ready to receive.
Mm-hmm.
Like the woman who's searching for an apartment in New York City
Oh, yeah.
during a major housing shortage. Imagine this, you're in the midst of a housing crisis.
Mm.
Apartments are scarcer than a sunny day in Seattle during winter, and everyone's telling you to give up.
Yeah.
But this woman, she had other plans.
Okay.
She was not giving up.
So she decided to dig her ditches even before she found a place.
She did.
What did that even look like in the situation?
She decided to buy new blankets.
Okay.
Seems simple, right?
Yeah.
But in her mind, she was already preparing for that perfect apartment, already surrounding herself with the energy of having that cozy new home.
I love that. And I'm guessing the universe delivered?
Not without a little test first.
Ooh, there's always a test.
Right. Just as she's about to buy the blankets, that little voice of doubt, Shinn calls it the tempter,
Yeah.
pops up and says, "Don't do it. You probably won't even get an apartment."
Oh, I know that voice all too well. It's like it always waits for the worst possible moment to just like chime in.
Right. But this woman, she was having none of it.
Good for her.
She recognized that voice for what it was, a test of her faith.
Yes.
So she bought the blankets anyway.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat here. Did she find her apartment?
She did.
Come on.
And not just any apartment.
Yeah.
This was in New York City, mind you, with hundreds of applicants for every vacancy.
It's brutal out there.
But she landed it.
Wow. That's a powerful example of how sometimes the most illogical actions, like buying those blankets, can be the very things that shift our energy and open us up to receiving what we desire.
Absolutely. Shinn believed that this principle of digging ditches is especially crucial when we're on the verge of a breakthrough, because that's often when that doubt and that fear tend to really rear their heads.
It's like that saying, it's always darkest before the dawn. It's like the universe wants to make sure we're serious,
Right.
that we're truly committed to our vision before it delivers the goods.
Precisely. And that's where unwavering faith comes in. We have to hold on to that vision even when all external evidence seems to contradict it.
It's about trusting the process, trusting the timing of the universe, even when things get a little bumpy. Speaking of bumpy, Shinn doesn't shy away from talking about money.
No, she doesn't.
In fact, she talks about it quite a bit, but always through this lens of spiritual law, right?
Absolutely. And one of the key concepts she emphasizes is becoming financially fearless.
Financially fearless. I like the sound of that, but what does it actually mean?
It's about releasing that tight grip on money, trusting that there's always more where that came from, and really viewing it as a tool for good in the world. Shin believed that hoarding and saving actually lead to loss, while giving and spending with wisdom and generosity open up the floodgates of abundance.
So it's not about being reckless with money, but rather shifting our mindset from one of scarcity to one of abundance.
Exactly. And being willing to invest in ourselves and our dreams, even if it means taking a calculated risk or spending a bit more than we're comfortable with. Shin illustrates this beautifully with the story of the man who bought the expensive fur-lined overcoat.
Oh, yes. That story really struck me. Here's this guy who's probably supposed to be watching his budget, and he spends a good chunk of his savings on this luxurious coat.
Right.
His logical mind must have been screaming at him.
But he had this intuitive feeling that if he bought the coat, he'd make a ton of money.
Okay.
And you know what?
He did. He received that big commission shortly after.
And it was a commission he likely wouldn't have received had he not made that initial investment in himself and his belief in his own success. That coat was a symbol of the wealth and abundance he knew he deserved.
Sometimes you've just got to take that leap of faith, trust that the universe is going to catch you.
Precisely. And Shin stresses that this principle of financial fearlessness applies not just to spending, but also to giving. She was a big believer in the power of tithing.
They're tithing the practice of giving away a tenth of your income that's been around for ages. But I'd never really thought of it as a tool for manifesting wealth.
Shin saw it as a way of aligning ourselves with that universal law of abundance. By giving freely and generously, we create this vacuum that the universe is just naturally compelled to fill.
So it's about shifting our focus from what do I have to what can I give?
Exactly. And to take it a step further, Shin believed that we should approach everything in life with that same attitude of generosity and non-resistance. Not just with money, but also with our time, energy, and even our forgiveness.
I love that she dedicates a whole chapter to the law of non-resistance. It's such a powerful concept, but definitely a bit of a head-scratcher at times.
Right.
It seems so counterintuitive, especially in a world that often tells us to fight for what we want to stand our ground.
Absolutely. We're conditioned to believe that resistance is necessary for survival, that we have to protect ourselves from harm. But Shin believed that true power lies in surrender, in letting go of the need to control and allowing the universe to orchestrate the best possible outcome.
She uses that great analogy of water. It's the most powerful element because it's perfectly non-resistant. It can wear away rock, carve out canyons, yet it's soft and yielding at the same time.
Exactly. And she stresses that when we resist a situation, we're actually giving it more power. We trap ourselves in this cycle of negativity and struggle that can be incredibly draining.
Like that saying, what you resist persists.
Yes. And Shin takes it a step further by saying that we should not only not resist, but we should also baptize every negative event with success.
Baptize an event with success. Okay, I have to admit that one's new to me. What does that even look like in practice?
It means choosing to see the good in every situation, even if it's not immediately apparent. It's about trusting that there's this divine order to the universe, even when things seem chaotic or unfair. Shin illustrates this with the story of the woman who kept missing her streetcar.
Oh, right. Every time she'd get to the stop, the streetcar would pull away. It was like she had the worst luck imaginable.
And her daughter, on the other hand, always seemed to catch it with no problem. Shin uses this as an example of how our thoughts and beliefs can actually influence the events in our lives. The woman had unconsciously created this law of failure for herself, whereas her daughter had created a law of success.
It reminds me of that Henry Ford quote, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Our beliefs really do have a way of becoming self-fulfilling prophecies.
Absolutely. And the good news is we have the power to change those beliefs, to reprogram our subconscious for success. And one of the most potent ways to do that is through the law of non-resistance. Shin shares another great story about a woman who was terrified of walking under ladders.
Oh, the classic superstition.
Exactly. And wouldn't you know it, one day this woman found herself in a situation where she had to walk under a ladder to get to her safe deposit box at the bank.
Oh, I can only imagine the dread she must have felt.
She was terrified, but she remembered what Shin had said about facing our fears. So she decided to be bold, walk under that ladder, and see what happened.
What happened?
When she went back to walk under the ladder, it was gone.
Wait, what? The ladder just vanished.
Vanished. It was gone. Talk about your divine intervention. It perfectly illustrates the power of non-resistance. By releasing her fear and surrendering to the situation, the woman allowed the universe to intervene in a way that was beneficial for her.
It's almost as if by resisting, she was holding that ladder in place with her fear, and when she let go, the universe could remove the obstacle. Amazing.
Exactly. And Shinn argues that this principle applies to all areas of life: finances, careers, relationships, health, you name it.
So it's about learning to trust the wisdom of the universe, to surrender to the flow of life, to have faith that even when things appear to be going wrong, there's a bigger plan unfolding.
Precisely. And often, the greatest opportunities for growth and abundance come disguised as challenges or setbacks. Shinn tells this fascinating story about a woman who was struggling financially and desperately needed $3,000.
That's a pretty specific amount. What was going on?
It was a debt that was weighing heavily on her mind. She came to Shinn for help, and Shinn, being Shinn, reassured her that the money would come, but encouraged her to act as if she'd already received it.
There's that act as if principle again. It's about embodying the feeling of having already received what we desire even before it manifests in the physical world.
Exactly. Well, the day the debt was due arrived, and understandably, the woman was anxious because the money still hadn't materialized. Shinn's advice to her was pure gold. She told her to go out for an expensive lunch and to act rich.
Now, that's what I call next level faith.
Right. Well, as fate would have it, the woman bumped into a long-lost relative who just happened to be in town. They got to talking, and the relative, completely out of the blue, asked the woman about her finances.
Oh, way.
The woman confided in her relative about needing the money, and the relative said she'd give her the $3,000, but that it wouldn't be available until the first of the month.
Which was still a few days away, I'm assuming.
It was. But before the woman could even explain the urgency of the situation, her relative called back and said she could have the money that day. Just like that the problem was solved.
Talk about divine timing. It's like the universe was just waiting for her to relax her grip on the situation, trust that it was being handled.
Exactly. And that story speaks to the power of non-resistance on so many levels. By choosing to see herself as already prosperous by acting rich, the woman shifted her energy and opened herself up to receiving the abundance that was rightfully hers.
It makes you think about the ways in which we might be blocking our own blessings by holding on to worry, fear, or doubt.
Absolutely. And, Shinn also believed that non-resistance was essential for maintaining harmonious relationships. She emphasizes the importance of approaching our interactions with others from a place of love and understanding, even when they're behaving badly.
Okay, yeah, I'm picking up what you're putting down, but easier said than done, right? How do we actually put that into practice, especially when we're dealing with people who are, well, a bit challenging, let's just say.
Oh, absolutely. It's not always easy.
Yeah.
But, Shinn reminds us that we're all these spiritual beings, right?
Yeah.
Navigating this human experience.
Yeah.
And that means we're bound to, make mistakes.
Yeah.
Sometimes act out of alignment with our highest selves.
Yeah, totally. So it's about extending that same generosity and non-resistance that we were talking about earlier to our relationships as well.
Yes, exactly. And a big part of that, according to Shinn, is forgiveness.
Okay.
Not just forgiving others, but also, and perhaps more importantly, forgiving ourselves.
Yeah, she talks about holding on to grudges and resentment, drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Oh, it's such a powerful image, right?
It is.
Because it really highlights the futility of holding on to that anger, that resentment. It just doesn't serve anyone, least of all ourselves.
And speaking of not serving ourselves, Shinn tells this really intriguing story about this woman who was convinced that she had received a counterfeit $20 bill from the bank.
Oh, yes. And she was furious.
Yeah.
Convinced that they had cheated her and would never own up to it.
Yeah, but Shinn, always looking beneath the surface, right?
Yeah.
She had a different take on the situation. What did she say to this woman?
She asked the woman if she had ever done anything that could be considered, shall we say, financially inauthentic.
I love that. Financially inauthentic.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out that this woman had recently sent a friend a bunch of fake money as a joke.
Oh, the irony. The universe does love a good laugh.
Right. So Shinn encourages this woman to call upon the law of forgiveness, to neutralize the situation by acknowledging her own part in it, and then to go back to the bank and explain what had happened.
Wait, so she told her to go back to the bank and confess to sending fake money.
Yes.
That's a bold move.
It is. But you know what? The bank apologized and gave her a new $20 bill. They did.
What?
Talk about,
They just gave her a new bill.
They did.
That's amazing.
And the takeaway here is that when we're willing to take responsibility for our actions, to own our stuff and make amends, we create the space for those unexpected miracles to occur.
Yeah, it's about aligning ourselves with that energy of grace and forgiveness, which, let's be honest, are way more potent than blame and resentment.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no question. This whole idea of owning our stuff, it connects beautifully with Shinn's concept of karma and intuition.
Okay, let's talk about karma for a second. It's one of those words that gets thrown around a lot,
It does.
but it can be kind of loaded.
Right.
So what's Shinn's take on how karma actually plays out in this whole game of life?
So Shinn sees karma as the universal law of cause and effect. It's not about punishment, though. It's more about, like, balance.
And learning, every thought, every word, every action creates this ripple effect that eventually comes back to us. And she tells this interesting story about this woman who's constantly complaining about her aunt.
Okay.
And she says that whatever she says to her aunt, inevitably, someone will say back to her.
Oh, wow. It's like the universe was holding up a mirror, reflecting her own behavior back at her.
Exactly. And this woman, she was high in consciousness, which, according to Shinn, meant that her karma returned to her more swiftly.
So the more aware we are of this spiritual law, the more accountable we become for our thoughts and actions.
Exactly. And that's where the importance of forgiveness comes in yet again. Shinn believed that by practicing forgiveness, we can actually neutralize the effects of even our past negative karma.
Wow. Okay. So it's about recognizing that we're all a work in progress, capable of making mistakes.
Right.
And that through forgiveness, we can release ourselves from those cycles of blame and retribution.
Yeah.
And step into something new.
Exactly. And again, it's not just about forgiving others. It's about forgiving ourselves
Totally.
for those past mistakes and really stepping into that space of self-compassion.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about learning from those experiences and then moving forward, not letting the past, define us or hold us back from experiencing the fullness of life in this present moment. Now, along with karma, there's also intuition. How does Shinn view the role of intuition in our lives?
So Shinn refers to intuition as our unerring guide.
Okay.
It's that inner compass,
Yeah.
those nudges, those hunches.
Yeah, those gut feelings.
Yes, that might seem to defy logic, but often lead us in the right direction.
It's so true. Like, how many times have you had that gut feeling and then you didn't listen to it and you're like, ugh, I should have listened to my gut.
Exactly. And, sometimes those nudges are pretty subtle.
Yeah.
Shinn talks about paying attention to what she calls the signs of land.
What does that even mean?
So those little synchronicities, those little coincidences that often precede a big manifestation.
Okay. She tells that story about the woman who had been speaking the word, I think is how she says it, speaking the word for a new set of dishes, right?
Yes, yes. And her friend gives her this old, cracked plate.
Which I'm assuming was not quite the manifestation she had in mind.
Not exactly.
Yeah.
And the woman was understandably kind of disappointed,
Yeah.
thinking, oh, is this all I'm going to get? Like one cracked plate instead of this whole new set of dishes.
Right. She's thinking abundance, not
I see.
one cracked plate.
Exactly. But Shinn reassures her. She's like, no, this is just a sign,
Okay.
a confirmation that your dishes are on their way. Don't lose faith.
And did she get her dishes?
She did. It wasn't long after that she received a beautiful brand new set of dishes.
Wow. Those stories are so inspiring because, they remind us that the universe often works in mysterious ways. It's not always a straight line from, desire to manifestation,
Well.
There are often twists and turns along the way, like a little tests of faith almost, to make sure that we're really paying attention
Yeah,
and truly aligned with what we're asking for.
exactly. And Shinn believed that one of the most potent ways to really strengthen our faith is by making believe,
Okay.
by acting as if our desires have already been fulfilled.
Yeah, she talks about how children are, masters at this.
Oh, they are.
Right.
They are.
They're constantly creating and imagining, completely immersed in their own worlds.
They're natural manifestors.
Yeah.
And Shinn believed that we could learn a lot from their unwavering faith in the power of their own minds. She tells the story of this woman who was living in poverty, but she refused to see herself as poor. She surrounded herself with things that made her feel abundant and joyful, even if they were small.
She was digging her ditches, even if she didn't realize it.
Exactly. And you know what? Eventually, she ends up marrying a wealthy man and living this life of abundance.
It's like that saying, fake it till you make it. But it's more than just faking it. It's about shifting your energy, Believing it's possible.
Yes, exactly. It's a choice.
Yeah.
We have a choice in how we perceive our reality.
Me too. We reflect.
Energy, our beliefs, they play a powerful role in shaping our experiences.
Absolutely.
No question.
So it all comes back to that idea that life is a game, not a battle.
Yes.
And if we can understand the rules, if we can cultivate that mindset of faith, gratitude, non-resistance,
Yes.
we can create a life that is both joyful and abundant.
A life that's in alignment with our own unique divine design.
It has been so much fun diving into the world of Florence Scovel Shinn with you.
I've loved it.
Her work is such a powerful reminder that we're not just these passive bystanders in our own lives,
Right.
but we are active creators with the ability to shape our own destinies.
Yes, we are.
That's so good. So, as you move through your day, I encourage you to consider this. What if you chose to approach those current challenges, whatever they may be, through the lens of the game? How would that shift your perspective? What would become possible? Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.